Dr. Shruti Rawal is an assistant professor in the Department of English at St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. She has a distinctive academic record with merit scholarship from CBSE. She pursued her PhD on city narratives. She has been teaching for over a decade and is associated with editorial boards of journals as a reviewer and is a member of Executive Council of LTI Jaipur. Handing over to Dr. Shruti Rawal to share her valuable knowledge. Dr. Shruti, are you there? Dr. Shruti, are you there?
Bhagishri ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking that maybe we can connect with Dr. Shruti, and meanwhile you can take a follow-up with Dr. Prerna ma'am. I think she was concluding her talk. So if you can check with the participants that if there were any questions, I think she was in the later end addressing the participants.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So if Dr. Prerna is still there, maybe you can first take a follow-up or feedback if there are any questions to Dr. Prerna. Meanwhile, Dr. Shruti would have joined.
Prerna, over to you, please. Prerna, ma'am, are you there? Can you
Yes, I'm very
conclude
much here.
and please take the questions of participants?
Yeah, that I have already mentioned that the major questions may please be sent through mail or maybe like texted on my mail ID. And I was actually wanted to motivate the upcoming researchers who really wanted to pursue their work. We should blend some of the toolkits in order to bring out their research, especially those computational analysis toolkits and all text mining part, so that even those Indian ones may have a few names in the presence of that area, that is AI in social sciences and humanities. That was my call. I was concluding in that way. Because when I was preparing this presentation, I found it very rare, like no names there in the Indian authors part that people have actually worked upon. Most of them were like foreign authors. So I believe that this is the high time that we Indians should start, working upon or taking up these toolkits, including in our research to have that comprehensive ones. So that was my part I wanted to mention.
Participants, if you have any question, you may ask. Let's take a 5-minute break until Dr. Shruti Rawal joins us.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prerna, for sharing your valuable information.
Thanks, Bhagishri. Thanks to all the participants for listening this particular session. Thank you so much.
If anyone has questions or wants to give a feedback, please you can write in comments also. That would be very appreciative. I think the second speaker for today, Dr. Shruti Rawal ma'am has joined. Ma'am, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let me introduce Dr. Shruti Rawal again. We have ma'am speaking on enhancing academic proficiency. So Dr. Shruti Rawal is an assistant professor in the Department of English at Xavier's College, Jaipur. She has a distinctive academic record with merit scholarship from CBSE. She pursued her PhD on city narratives. She has been teaching for over a decade and is associated with the editorial boards of journals as a reviewer and a member of the Executive Council of LTI Jaipur. Handing over to Dr. Shruti Rawal to share her valuable knowledge. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bhagishri, for the invite. I hope.
Welcome.
All right. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session on enhancing academic proficiency. I am Dr. Shruti, as Bhagishri has generously introduced me. I am an assistant professor with St. Xavier's College, Jaipur Department of English. I'll be speaking on how language plays a crucial role and also different aspects of research and research publications, thereby integrating the 3 pointers mentioned in my session. So thank you, everyone. And I'll also be now sharing my screen. So Bhagishri, could you just let me know if my screen is visible? That would be wonderful. Is it?
Yes, ma'am. It's definitely visible.
Thank
You can
you.
go ahead.
All right. So I thought I'm taking the second session, so let's make it, if not interactive, at least a little engaging for all of you. So here is a small write-up that I have on the screen with two celluloid people there. And this is a little report on the nature of their relationship. So if anyone would like to read out, or if you want, I can just read out on my own. Bhagyashri, would you mind reading out a few lines, please?
Yes, ma'am, sure. Malaika Arora and Arjun Kapoor's relationship. Of late, Arjun Kapoor and Malaika Arora have been grabbing headlines for their alleged breakup. Neither Arjun nor Malaika have reacted to these reports. That's a little unusual because Arjun and Malaika have been quick to call out malicious report about them or their relationship. Our sources revealed that Arjun and Malaika are busy having a good laugh at these constant rumors and the chatter around their relationship. Recently, Arjun's name was linked with Kusha Kapila as well. The comedians seemingly reacted to the same, allegedly dismissing it. While the chatter continues, let's have a look at Malaika Arora and Arjun Kapoor's relationship timeline.
All right, so it's a small write-up. I've taken it from the net, and it was published as well, because we're talking about publications also here. Let us look at another write-up. Let's look at poverty and entitlement. So I wouldn't burden Bhagyashri too much. She would think, since I introduced ma'am, the onus has fallen on me. I'll read just the first paragraph. Starvation is the characteristic of some people not having enough food to eat. It is not the characteristic of there being not enough food to eat. While the latter can be a cause of the former, it is but one of the many possible causes. Whether and how starvation relates to food supply is a matter for factual investigation. So look at the two write-ups that we have just gone through, and very different in nature. Of course, the content is different, the elements presented are different, the language is different. Would anyone like to spell out further as to what was the difference between the two, if it is presented in an academic setup? Would anyone like to? The two write-ups that were just shared. All right, I'll
the second.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Go ahead.
The second one is more academic. It will be acceptable for an academic audience. The second one, the poverty and entitlement, unlike the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have
in the second one, that proper academic writing concept has been followed, and rather in the first one, that only that information has been imparted to the readers, interested readers. So the basic difference is between that the concepts and the part of that writing skills as well. So the major differentiation is here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for being wonderful listeners. I was just worried. I am the second speaker, so whether you would be interested or not, that's the reason I kept some examples. Okay, so you're absolutely right. The first was, it was not just about the content. It was not just that it's a gossip column. It is also about, look at it, how the language that is used to express the content is a little trivial. You might find words there which are good. The language is it's not that it is grammatically incorrect or there is some problem with the syntax, but it is a language that is not acceptable in academic publications. Also, look at how many conjectures are drawn. It might be possible in the past, it has happened, it might be true. So there are no conclusions drawn in the entire write-up or article that has been published. And look at the overall gravity of the topic also. It is not concerned, it is non-academic in nature. Look at the second one, on the other hand. It's a research paper, of course, like you like Margaret pointed out. It's suitable for academic publication. It is serious in theme and in treatment of can Tijani sir please mute us? Yes, can the host please mute if Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. So, in both in terms of content and form, the second appears to be more academic.
Atashuro tushayesi yakulimina danzin kero nzi abia tushayesi harimo abia manado
Academic
ndakero
form
lozano
public.
wasanya isen
All
Ma'am,
right.
please,
Please
I'm not
unmute.
able to mute him actually. Just give me a second.
Yeah, that's that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhagesh. Thank you.
Oh,
All right. Okay. So as we begin with all of it, let us now come to an understanding, since most of us also understand what it is. Academic writing is a specific kind of writing style that we all agree used more in a scholarly and educational setup. The tone, the manner in which you express yourself, the manner in which you organize what you want to express, it logical in nature. And of course, since we are writing to get published, it has to adhere to some specific guidelines. So, the primary aim here is to communicate our ideas, more than ideas, which can be vague, research findings to a specific kind of audience, especially scholarly researchers, students, or in this case, in academia too. Academic writing is commonly, of course, it's found in journals, in research paper. Of course, we use it for dissertation, thesis, conference paper, and in anthology and academic books. So that was a little bit of theoretical backdrop as to where do we employ academic writing. How do we characterize certain kind of writing? One, it has to be objective. Now, how is objective different from something that is subjective? And especially in humanities and social sciences, it comes across as a challenge, because when I say it is everything has to be objective, everything does not qualify for 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. I'm dealing with human emotions. That's a question I have often heard from my research scholars. Ma'am, it's not mathematical in nature. Then how do you retain the element of objectivity in a subject that is subjective in itself? I'm saying, can we have some cause and effect relationship when I analyze a set of data? It can be, let's say, dealing with a novel, it can deal with a plot, it can deal with something which is truly based on human emotions and still have a certain element of objectivity in it. It should be clear. The tone as to what I want to state should not go about in a roundabout fashion where I'm not making any sense. There has to be a certain precision, even when I'm discussing events, characters, people, society. It should be precise. I cannot be colloquial in the choice of my language. The language has to be formal. We just observe the difference between the two write ups. The tone has to be formal. That is, certain words which are, let's say, acceptable these days in the manner in which we have started to speak to one another, or in the way we are texting, or even in email, like FYI, or let's say something like at the end of the day. The kind of acronyms that we all are accustomed to using is not something that is acceptable in academic writing. Everything that I state has to be based on certain evidence. Even if it is something like I'm speaking in terms of what kind of character a person is, or I'm analyzing the ending of a story, or I'm looking at different theories related to social sciences also, it has to be backed by certain evidence. Look at the structure, and I'm going to talk about it in detail because it is something that that comes as a challenge when we structure our paper. It has to have a certain structure. I cannot start with something in between and then come to introduction. And even when we state clearly, it has to be different than an essay that we write, for example, in our exams, or something that we submit in at high school level or graduation. So the structure of a research paper also is different. Then something that is very crucial and something that I've also been asked to elaborate a little more is citations and referencing, because as a reviewer also, I find this is an area that researchers need to focus more on, because at the end of the day, even when the content part is appealing and I'm unable to put the referencing in a particular manner, the paper in its form does not appeal to a reviewer or an editor. and the formal research methods, which can be very peculiar to your subject area. That is, for economics, it can be different. For English, it might be a little different. Sociology might have a different theory altogether. So these are certain features of academic writing. Overall, it has to have certain structure. It should be clear. It should be precise. Let's go ahead again. Just theoretical knowledge. You should know what a research paper is from academic writing, because for that matter, academic writing is also report writing, which is not a research paper. Academic writing can also be the reports that a science student might submit. That's again not a research paper. So what is a research paper? It's a specific kind of academic writing on a particular topic. And the first time it was used is way back in 16th century. That is how the Webster Online Dictionary describes it. That means, in its simplest sense, something to search. Look at it, searchel. That is something to search. So that is from where the word springs, and from there we derive the word research papers. Now, why should I do it? I have this question coming from students also that I teach, ma'am. Why it has, it is so much in fashion. Everybody's talking about writing a research paper. I remember when I was younger, it was not something a postgraduate student would do. But these days, there are many good students who are introduced to research very early, and even graduate and postgraduate students, they have attempted to write, if along with a supervisor or sometimes by themselves. Now, at its very core, when you do or write a research paper, it enables critical thinking. What is critical thinking? I think that is the ultimate aim of every paper, that is to enable a student to think independently, to analyze a few things. That is critical thinking. Can I think on my own, or am I going to just, all the tools, every theory that you learn, it just equips you to deal with a certain subject better. Nobody says this is the end of the world. At the end of the day, all knowledge that comes to you should enable you to think more critically, to analyze things yourself. Second, and a more dull way of putting it, is academic growth. In colleges and universities, research, both participation in conferences, publication in papers, it is indispensable. You cannot, just not do it. You cannot say this is not meant for me. It is a very important and integral part of university education. Then it also kind of teaches you academic integrity. It is so easy to be lured into, especially with AI, into something you read, something you want to present in a different manner. But do I have the character and integrity to write my own, to express thoughts that are my own, and eventually leading to the fourth pointer, contributing to the overall corpus of knowledge? There can be many reasons why you should do it. There's certain people, I have colleagues who are more inclined towards research. There are some whom it does not come naturally. They find it challenging. It's always better when you find it challenging to collaborate, maybe with a student, collaborate with your colleague and be introduced to it, because eventually at the end of the day, all of us have to do it. So that contribution to knowledge, I think it is a very far-fetched goal. I think as a scholar and a learner who has been doing it for 15 years now, I cannot say that I know it all. And maybe that contribution to knowledge will come only very late in my career. But the little honest efforts that I can make and present in a logical manner to the world, that counts too. Now, this is research. Now, this is very important to understand that it is what it is not. It is not an accidental discovery. It is not data collection, because many of social sciences, even in fact, when we talk of humanities, we end up summarizing a few things. It is not research. And, just publishing or incorporating in your paper someone else's research, dwelling upon it throughout in your paper, is not research. So sometimes it is easier to understand a term with what it is not. So remember, it is not accident. It's not just that I thought, oh my God, this can be true, and this is research. It doesn't work that way. So you have to prove through cause and effect in a logical, structured manner, this is what it is. So what is it? It is systematic, it is orderly, it creates new knowledge, and that knowledge has to be reliable. It cannot be my whims and fancies. Suppose I am working on OTT and suddenly an idea springs in my mind. Okay, I saw this and oh my God, this is not true. Let me just, no, I'll have to prove through examples, through references. That is how I have arrived at a particular conclusion. Now look at what is the difference, because these are two terms that I find students and scholars use interchangeably. Look at what is research and what is research methods, that is methodology. So research is application of the scientific method. It's a systematic process of collecting and organizing data. Methodology is the way one collects and analyzes it, and also the methods that you use, which might again vary with your subject. So let's say somebody who is studying humanities, especially let's say English, it becomes very challenging. You have all these theories floating around. Is it applicable to the text that I have selected, or am I just enforcing certain things? How does it come naturally? So these are certain challenges that I am, out of my own little experience, sharing with you all. It becomes challenging to also identify what methodology suits my field, my area, my domain, my topic. So that you have to figure out. So initially it can be with the help of a supervisor, a teacher, a mentor, your friends, peer learning. It can be a colleague. Lots of discussion comes in handy. What has helped me over a period of time is also review of literature that I'm going to talk about. If I have selected a particular core area and I review 5 papers on that particular area, it puts me in a better condition to understand, analyze, and then present my idea. So the solution can be varied depending on an individual, but these are few ways you can counter, because this is challenging, identifying a methodology. Maybe it is easier when it comes to data interpretation and analysis, which for other fields becomes, I won't say easier for them, but at least well defined for them. For humanities and social sciences, it can sometimes pose as a challenge. I think we have talked about it. Okay, now questions that one needs to keep in mind while identifying what research methodology or research area or what topic one wants to work upon. The first is, look at what is known about the subject. I cannot just start from anywhere. I have to identify what has already been established in that particular area. Look at the second. Are there any gaps in the knowledge? That is where your topic comes into play. That is, let's say, I have students who still say, ma'am, I want to research on Hamlet. So, Manika, what's new? What is new in that? Have you read about Hamlet? There is so much that has been written. Ma'am, there's certain children, ma'am, I want to work on the Victorian sensibility. When they read 10 papers, they realize everything has been spelled out. Then there is one student who would come and say, ma'am, no, this is an area in Victorian sensibility I read, and I have not read enough. I did not come across any paper that dealt with it. And thereby that particular student out of the 10 in the group has identified a gap. So what is a gap? That is something that has not been explored in that particular area, domain, or subject. Now look at, have areas of further study been identified by other researchers that you may want to consider? That what comes in handy here is so many online portals that are available where you have open access journals and sources. I have enumerated a few, so I'm going to talk about it later. Who are the significant research personalities? This also helps a lot. Now, suppose I'm working on diaspora. So have I read writers who have written on diaspora, or is my knowledge only limited to that one writer that I'm going to talk about? If I'm talking of post-colonialism, do I know it only from the context of India or from the global context of the entire world? So these are certain things that, it doesn't work out in a day. If you decide to work on something, I pick out a relevant book, maybe a relevant writer who has worked, and then, identify. Is there consensus about the topic? So this can be a little controversial. So I'm talking about the entire world is talking about the gender discrimination, and suppose I pick up on the positive role of patriarchy in the selected text. So am I working against what is being said? Would it be acceptable? Have I evidence enough to prove it? So if you feel convinced, if you feel like you want to go against the stream, you have to identify, is it what is being talked about? Am I just negating it for the sake of negation, or do I have evidence enough to prove? What aspects have generated significant debate on the topic? So, of course, there would be writers, there would be scholars, there would be researchers who have written about it. So, that helps in, I'm not saying in borrowing their idea, but in developing your own mind about the same idea. When you read and it suddenly strikes you, okay, I could have thought of dealing with it in this particular manner. But that comes only with reading. I have students who don't read, and then they suddenly, ma'am, it's not making sense because they have not read enough. Once you start,
हमारी भी मजबूरी है, खैर अपन सब नहीं, पर स्कोपस में मेरे ख्याल से 30 थे सर.
Swati ma'am, could you?
Ma'am, your mic is
Swati ma'am.
Swati ma'am.
All right, she's muted herself. Okay, so she was talking of scopus, so something that that's also as challenging when you look at the world of publication. Even when you draft a paper, the task of getting it published, I'm sure some other session is definitely covering how to go about the publication pattern, how to approach journals, how to identify journals, because the last couple of years have been so enabling in terms of research, in terms of where to get published, because it's so important to deal with that too. So thank you, Swati ma'am, for that pointer. What methods or problems were identified by others? So the methodology, is there someone who has used something that comes in handy for you, or is it when you read it, are you just borrowing it from there? That's also important to identify. Then identifying the most productive methodology for your particular topic. And just a moment. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. What might be the most useful methodology for you? Okay. Let's come to the overall terms from the perspective that of research that I should know while foraying into it. And I'll deal with some of it in detail because as a scholar myself, as a supervisor, as a reviewer, these are some challenging aspects. Sometimes when you read a paper, the title is so much not in sync. And how to draft or arrive at that title, that is important. It should not be too long. It should not be too short. It should incorporate the keywords. Then abstract, which generally you have to submit for the paper. Most of the Scopus journals also identify the number of words they are looking for in your abstract, which is ideally between 250 to 300. Sometimes some conferences go up to 500 words, but an abstract delineates most of the time as to what your paper intends to do. So it should have objectives, it should have all the keywords, it should be one paragraph most of the time, other than the social sciences journals who need an elaborate abstract. Sometimes people write 3 paragraphs in an abstract. Ideally, an abstract should be a single paragraph. Then within the research paper, of course, there has to be an introduction. Sometimes in humanities, you do not have segregated sections of introduction or review of literature or research gap. But even without those delineation, you need to, delineate the paragraphs so that a person who is reading your research, a scholar, can identify that this paragraph deals with this. Even for that matter, methodology, most of the humanities journal do not have it mentioned separately, but they would have a paragraph that talks about it. Then the objectives of your research, again, can be pointers. Sometimes they're also in the form of questions. Even in your research proposal, when you write for PhD, they can also be in the form of questions, though most of the humanities journal prefer it more to be in the form of stated sentences. Then analysis, conclusion, and then most important part, citations and references. Look at the hourglass structure. I'm sure many of you are already aware of it. When you conceptualize your research paper, when you think of it, this is how we go about it. You talk first of a broader context, then identify the knowledge gap. I'm slowly moving to my research question and narrowing down my research. When I arrive at analysis, the research answer, and the implications to the broader world, it becomes again a broader context. So it's an hourglass structure. It starts broader, more universal, moves towards individual analysis, and ends towards again broader implications. It cannot be just one text I'm talking about. If it's an eco-critical text, maybe I'm analyzing Amitav Ghosh's perspective in it. But in the end, I should be making more sense than just Amitav Ghosh. And I'm talking about diaspora. It should arrive at a broader or a larger conclusion than just one particular writer, one particular text, or one particular problem that is identified in my research. Now look at the title. Yeah. It should be short yet comprehensive. If it includes the name of a novel or a writer, make sure it is the complete name. I cannot write, let's say, Lahiri's Interpreter of Melodies. I'll have to write Jhumpa Lahiri as the full name. I'll have to write Salman Rushdie as the full name. I cannot use just surnames there. Then I should be careful of using the keywords in the title. And these keywords, again, could be repeated as a part of your abstract. That is how you have more frequent searches. Then there should be no full stop. I have also taken a few screenshots from papers where, I'll tell you how it comes into play. Sometimes I've also, in terms of capitalizing, each word in a title is capitalized, except for, let's say, if you have an, of, like, that can be kept in small. Let's look at a few two examples that I have put from two different writers. The Famine Projects and Digital Trauma Studies in India, that's one title, and Women Diaspora Writers in Indian Writing in English. So these are realistic papers, okay? I've taken it, extracted the titles from two papers. So the first one did justice to what was being talked about. The second one, unfortunately, was too broad an area. So while you identify what research area or topic you want to finalize, you have to be careful. You cannot select 6 novels and do a research analysis in a single paper. It is, you won't be able to do justice to it. Similarly, writing a paper about all the women novelists, all the entire diaspora in a single paper would end up just being a review. It would never be a research academic paper. Okay, so I thought these two examples would help me make a point. Yeah, this is very important, especially when I, kind of do it with my scholars. I never select something because it is in. You'll have to select something that interests you, that at least touches you somewhere in your heart, mind, or soul. And I'm incorporating mind also. Choose a feasible topic. To do a topic that is doable, put very simply. Don't be too ambitious. Like, I'll not take someone else's example. I'll take my own example. I was studying cities, and I wanted to study the cities of Rajasthan, that is Udaipur and Jaipur. But the point was that when I was doing my PhD, I realized that these were cities on which not many novels have been written. So if I select that particular topic, I won't be able to do justice to it. So though I was emotionally connected to these two cities, I decided not to choose them for my research work because I thought it would not be feasible. And then choose a topic that is research worthy. So by worthy, I means all the elements that we have talked about in terms of, do I have a methodology to, to study it properly? Am I equipped enough to study it? That's also important. Suppose it's not my domain, I'm not ready, the deadline is fast approaching, it is impossible to do it. Suppose you're interested, you have enough time, you can go ahead, devote, and then study accordingly. A look at the introduction. And here I'll give you a few examples. Just a moment. I had selected a paper because, one-sided PPT and it's not making any sense. It is better to look at something that validates my point. So I selected this paper. Look at how it has been put. Yeah. Look at the title. The Post-Colonial Uncanny, the Politics of Dispossession in Amitav Ghosh's Hungry Tide. The Hungry Tide. Look at how the Hungry Tide is italicized. Look at how the full name has been given of the author. And this is the paper. Look at how the introduction starts. So it talks about the post-colonial societies. It talks about the issues. Look at how the data has been properly given along with certain social activists and writers who have worked in this particular area. And then the writer comes to Amitav Ghosh. So that is how the introduction has been designed. Look at how it moves, as I talked about the hourglass structure, from broader to gradually in the second and third paragraph, he talks about the hungry tide eventually, only later. Okay, look at how it talks about methodology also, the uncanny by Freud. So very subtly in certain domains, like especially English literature I'm talking about here, there are reviewers and editors who do not like that kind of bifurcation in terms of methodology, and this is the methodology, but then it has to be subtly incorporated. It cannot be that you do not talk about it at all. Look at how the scholar here has incorporated all the citations, and look at the theory that has been put. Look at how the methodology continues from the second, third paragraph to here. I'll give you one more example, slightly different. Just a moment. Yeah, here it is. So this is another text, another paper that I have taken. Yeah, look at how it is a little different. I selected it because they both were different in nature. Apocalyptic narratives, the nation in Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. Look at how Midnight's Children is italicized. That is what we do to the names of the text that when we put them into the title. Now look at how it starts with two quotes, and then the first paragraph, unlike what we just talked about in introduction, that it should be broader, it should not just jump to the topic, it should be a little bit about the writer, but there's some scholars who do not adhere to the norm. So he talks a little bit about religion. Now look at the very first paragraph, because of course it is Salman Rushdie, and religion becomes an integral part when we discuss Salman Rushdie. So in the book of Revelation, John is living in forced exile on the island of Patmos, opposed to and alienated from the existing social political order he predicts. So this is all about how, and in the end note, it has been justified also, where has it been taken from. But it starts completely on a different note. There is no mention of Salman Rushdie. And then look at the third paragraph. Like the biblical story, secular apocalyptic writings about nation also express the dreams of the ostracized. So then suddenly in the third paragraph you integrate, but it needs a very high acumen to do this. So until unless you reach the stage where you can integrate something so organically into your research paper, and it is brave also, but this writer has done it very I think very intricately. So it doesn't look like there's something else being talked about, then there's something else. It is Christianity that is being talked about and later linked to Salman Rushdie's text. So I'll again come back to our PPT. I thought a few introductions and a few papers would make more sense than just the PPT. Just a moment. Okay. So objectives of the research problems, they have to be stated as to what you intend to do. And they also should move from a broader to a more specific context. It can be stated, as I told you earlier, in the form of questions, though humanities does not encourage that. Now, review of literature, this also can be done subtly and integrated as to what research has already been done in a particular area. And this can be also in the form when you write research proposal for grants has to be done separately, where you put a proper citation and talk about, review what has been written there. Or if you write in your own research paper, can be done more subtly as to so and so has stated, and make it a part of your research paper. Now, these are a few platforms that I'm sure at least the Indian audience is familiar to, and where you can just type in the keywords and also get to know about so many topics about how a particular writer has been perceived, presented. And this is how I ask my scholars to formulate their idea. When they come up with a particular writer, when they come up with a particular text, I tell them to come up with 10 papers, 10 dissertations that they have read on a particular topic. And that is when they start realizing what are the challenges therein. Is it a writer that is too much worked upon? It's a topic, not just a writer. Let's say a particular topic in social sciences also that has been already researched upon. So when they do this review, they figure out themselves that, you know, this ma'am has already been done. This is something I cannot do. This is too challenging. This is too narrow, ma'am. So that is how they arrived at their own particular idea. Now, this I think I have already talked about as to how to review on a particular topic. This is just laying out what I have already spelled earlier. Okay, this is very important. What is the relevance of your research work? I cannot just pick up something of 18th century and then say, okay, I've done it. Especially with humanities, it's become all the more challenging. How do I justify that my research work is, is something that is valid? It's something that is contributing, because sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough. Okay, what have I talked about? Sometimes you suffer from imposter syndrome also after reading your paper 10 times. You're still not satisfied with the way it is looking. So you have to, when you establish the relevance, when you talk about how is it contributing, why should a person read it, that's where the importance of your research topic lies. So when you write that relevance, whether it's a part of your conclusion, make sure you spell out clearly, and that works in a roundabout manner. If you think when you are jotting down the pointers initially as to how it works, you'll be able to identify it. Work cited, something that is very challenging as an editor and reviewer, that is whatever you have quoted and cited from other writers, how do I present it? And it is not that it is something that is very important, something that that is available also when you type it, Google it, but something that is frequently mistaken by all scholars. So I have incorporated, as to this is just an example, but just a minute. Yeah. So this is something that I was looking for, types of referencing. Though in humanities, most of us use MLA. Though these days even APA is specified in most of the Scopus journals. So it does not. It might sound scary that the referencing is different, but when you actually get to do it, and you can do it with the help of softwares. I saw one of the sessions, or the FDP also deals with that. So it becomes relatively easier. And if the AI or the software part scares you, even doing it manually is not so challenging. I have spelt it. I thought it would be easier if I just write it. So in-text citation is when within the research paper, I quote someone, I use a reference, or maybe I'm indirectly referring to an idea. How do I put it? I put it in parentheses, and I put the surname, and I put the page number. Okay, at the end of my paper, I put the work cited. Okay, and work cited again is different than bibliography. I hope you all know that bibliography is more about when you're referring to everything you have ever read. Work cited is what you have actually quoted in your text. Now look at, I have taken this from one of the two research papers that came for reviewing. Look at how we put it. It is not how it is done. And it is not so challenging also. If you do not know It is readily available on the internet. So it is that it is a surname, comma, name, full stop, then italicized name of the text. And then if you are following MLA 9th edition, it is, the publisher and the year and full stop. But this is how it comes to us as an editor and a reviewer. And that is why even the organizers, when I had a word with them, this was something that is challenging for us as teachers when we evaluate. APA, look at the other right, it's the author date, that is how we remember. So there's a slight difference, that is, look at the example that I have given you. This is the name of the author, Derwin and others, and 2002, Thomas, 2004. That is how I'm putting. Look at the second example. That is a works cited entry. Slightly different. The year here comes after the name of the author. So that is the difference. Not too complicated. When you cite, you put the name of the author, comma, the year. Sometimes some even proceed on to give the page number. So that's also acceptable. This is also another system, MHRA, which is like the footnote entry. Look at the one superscript. It does not use bracketed references in the body of the essay. Instead, how do we go? We use superscript numbers like this that are then linked to sequence. In fact, it's very much like the endnotes that we used to have when we were younger. Even some journals, even till date, they have footnotes and endnotes. Some find it more convenient. I've quoted something at the end of the page. I'll find a footnote. Endnotes is at the end of the paper. So that is MHRA. Another, then there is Chicago, then there is Harvard, and there are many. But most of the journals follow MLA. If you have tried applying for Scopus publications, you know that APA is a more acceptable format there. So it is not very challenging. It is something that can be worked upon. A slight variation here and there in your MLA entry will make it APA too. This is how an in-text citation of an MLA entry looks like. Look at how one has quoted. Now, a very important thing here is something I would like to point out. Look at the period, the full stop that is placed after the bracket. Imperialism is, and then the quoted definition of Edward Said, and then after the bracket, there's a full stop. Most of the contributors in journals put this full stop after the inverted comma. And that is where we end up wasting so much time, energy. And the moment I see it, I also know here's a student who does not know. He's a student who is not maybe researched enough. Okay. And this slight acumen also puts you on a higher pedestal. Say, is someone who knows research. So please be mindful of this period. I know a scholar who had to redo her entire PhD because of this, and becomes a tiresome process. So wherever there is a double inverted, you are quoting, you put the citation, that is the surname, then the page number inside the full stop. Okay, now look at work cited at the end. It is surname, then first name, then the culture and imperialism is italicized. It's not been italicized here. Then the publishing house, comma, and the year of publication. Why should I know this? I should know this because, as we all know, it is something, it's basic ethics and integrity that we have to teach to our students also. And with so many websites coming in terms of paraphrasing and AI tools, it is important that we teach our students not to see. It's always, I encourage my students to, your paper becomes so much richer when you have more citations. So instead of borrowing just ideas, it is important to also acknowledge them. So plagiarism, it destroys the career. I think it is a professional reputation that it's at. It is at its very core, it is unethical, and it is always so much easier to have more citations. I just keep telling them, the more citation, your paper looks richer. So instead of taking someone else's idea, acknowledge it, put that in citation. And this also you have to teach. Sometimes we come across papers where even common facts and historical facts and the phrases that are often used have been put to some Wikipedia entry. Please, we need to avoid that too. These are certain challenge areas. I think a lack of aptitude. I think it does not, at least in some parts of the world, start so early. It does not. So the problem is the critical thinking. Sometimes it is very integral to the way, though the education system has also evolved, the critical aspect seems missing, and then it becomes difficult to teach them at a certain level as to how to go about it. Then there's a certain complacency, especially with internet, I think, that makes it so much easier for students that they do not want to apply themselves. Even sometimes students who are very keen to do it, they lack the academic writing skills that are needed for a particular journal or a particular research paper, or writing a basic research paper. So sometimes the student is very sincere, but the problem then is the language does not feel appropriate to be published at a particular scale or level. Then this again, though I have found it repeatedly, very kind teachers, sometimes it is also good to have teachers who made you slog hard. So then it becomes, you are accustomed to working hard. Everything plated out also makes it difficult. So tell your students, and students also themselves, to go and find it out in the library. Go and tell them platforms to explore so that they also get hands-on experience. Then reading is another challenging area, especially with the next generation. It's not more ideas come to you when you read. Lack of reading skills, I think it ruins. And then plagiarism, one form or the other, whether it just does not show in the plagiarism report, but the idea that a particular paper, a particular topic is completely borrowed, that kind of, I think, ruins it. Then I think just ending up, I'd like to keep it simple. Look at it. You think before you write. It is very simple. Is it making sense? Would it make sense to a layman also? Write small sentences. I think they become very fond of difficult words, but language at its simplest form is something which is able to convey the meaning part of it. Sometimes in writing difficult words, we miss out the essence of the sentence, the meaning to be conveyed. Then that is from like at the most, I think 13 words in the sentence. Sometimes I have come across papers where sentences, there's a full stop. The entire paragraph has only 2 sentences. I think it's better to stop at one idea so that it's under control. We know what's happening in that sentence. Then you can always use a thesaurus, but don't end up being like the character of Friends Joey, who made his application cover letter just like a hilarious set. So when you are looking for thesaurus, when you are changing certain words to make it look more academic, make sure that it is making sense, it is applicable. Then I again said this, longer sentences somehow dilute what is to be said. And always read after you write. Sometimes you might not like the idea, give it some time. After a few days, read it again. Ask a friend to read, ask a colleague to read, look for feedback, what is their feedback before directly submitting it for publication. So you all are aware of AI tools, but let's say before I finally submit my paper, it is always better, even if you are a language teacher, to have a check. Sometimes, it shows up suggestions which are not even applicable. So that's where your own knowledge comes into play. But nevertheless, the AI tools, they do help you identify sometimes silly mistakes that might go unnoticed when you were checking. So these are a few AI tools that I thought, like Grammarly, even the unpaid version, it does the basic task. WordTune is for shortening, then Pro Writing Aid, Microsoft Editor, WordRake, and Language Tool, even for a multilingual writer. That helps a lot. So you run through them, but then eventually at the end of the day, you'll have to use your own common sense. Sometimes the suggestions are not so applicable, so you will have to work on that too. That's the final revision. Think before writing, keeping it simple. Read at least 5 papers before attempt to write on a particular topic, or even having a research methodology figured out, what do you want to apply, proofread and ask a colleague to proofread for you, someone else, and discuss. I think rather than keeping things to yourself, the more you discuss, sometimes an idea just strikes. So that helps a lot. So I think that was almost 55 minutes. So I'll stop my share and take any questions if they are. Thank you, Bhagyashri. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. It was a very informative session. It was a delight to share a screen with you and to hear you talk. I loved it. I personally liked this session very much.
Thank you, Bhagyashri. Thank you so much.
If dear participants, if anyone has questions, you can go ahead. Or you can write the questions on the comment section as well.
Hello. I have a question.
Okay,
Yes,
Margaret.
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the interesting session. I have one clarification and two questions.
Yes.
The clarification I need is the issue of including keywords in the title. I didn't get it very well. Should keywords be part of the title or should it not? That is number one. I need a clarification. Then the questions. Is there a difference between research method and research methodology? Can it be used interchangeably or are they different? Are they really different? And the second question is about the abstract. I think abstract should be written after a work is completed, but some may ask you to send an abstract before you have even started the work. Is there a difference? Is there an abstract before the work is actually started, or another abstract when the work is completed? I need the clarifications. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Margaret, for listening also so closely and asking question two. So I'll take the first one. I've noted all three down. So the first is issue of including keywords in the title. So let me spell it out again if what I said was confusing. By keywords, I mean, let's say I want to include memory and trauma. So this should also reflect in my title and when I write the keywords. Now, not all keywords can be a part of the title. That is, of course, the unsaid and the understood part. Let's say my 5 keywords cannot be a part of my title, but the essence of the paper, as when we identify what are the key elements that I am exploring in my paper, those keywords should figure. Whether it's let's say it is desire and identity. So that should be a part of my title, and that should also be a part of the keywords that I'm spelling out. So that's the first. Not all keywords can be a part of the title, but your basic elements in your research paper that you are exploring should definitely be a part of your title. Now, the second question is, what is the difference between, I think you said, research method and methodology? I think somebody's unmuted. So. Okay, so research method is a particular, identified method that you are taking into consideration when you are, understanding a particular problem. Let's say I have identified a particular research method to understand my topic. Methodology is, in a certain way, refers to the entire process and also determines the kind of applicability and appropriateness in terms of when I apply the research method in understanding the problem. I hope I made sense. I'll repeat myself. Method is what I select to study. Methodology refers to also the methods that are applied to understand a particular problem. So methodology becomes a broader domain and area. Method is invariably within the methodology. The third is regarding abstracts. And I'm absolutely in tuned with you that a perfect abstract only is written once the paper is done. But most conferences ask for abstract submission way before we have actually written the paper. So the way to go about it, the most of the time I end up writing my abstract after I have written my research paper. What you can do is initially you outline as to what your paper, suppose you're writing it for a journal. The ideal way to go about it would be first you finish your research paper and then you write your abstract. The most appropriate of the abstracts only come after the research paper is done. For a conference, unfortunately, when we have to submit it to a conference, we end up writing the abstract, to be very honest, before the research paper is written. In that case, I don't think we can help it. But what you can do is, what I have done in the past is, I edit my abstract for publication once my research paper is finalized. So your question had an answer in it. A perfect abstract is only written after the research paper is done. For conference, you can submit one, but when the conference proceedings are published, you can edit your abstract along with your final paper for publication. Margaret, I hope it answered your question.
Right.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret. Bhagyashree, do we have any more questions?
Any more questions? Anyone? Yes. Ma, any dear participants, any more questions? Or should we just wrap it up? If you want to type the question in the comment section, that is also fine.
Yeah, I think, yes.
Bhagyashree. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're
Okay.
audible. Yes, sir.
Yes. Actually,
Okay, ma'am. I don't think
madam is absolutely right. They
there are
first
any more
write
questions.
the complete research paper and then write the abstract. That is a proper way
Thank you
to
very
write
much,
the
ma'am.
research paper.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, Dr. Prajapati. I agree, sir. That's the right way to go about it.
Dr. Prajapati.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Bhagyashree. I think there was
Yes,
some
there are.
network error at your end.
Please.
We were able to hear Dr. Prajapati clearly. He
Yes, yes.
reiterated the point regarding the abstract and the paper. So,
Okay, right.
yes,
Fine.
yes. Thank you, sir. Yes, Bhagyashree, over to you then. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the encouraging comments in the chat section too.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Over to you, Bhagyashree.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. I
Thank you,
think
dear
we
participants,
should
for
wrap
today's session. Yes,
it up.
Bhagyashree, you
It
can
was a
wind up with the
very
session.
informative session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insight. We should wrap it up, sir. Sir, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, please conclude the session.
Okay, sir. We have concluded the session. I don't think you were there. Ma'am has wrapped this session very well. It was a very informative session, and participants has asked questions and shared the feedback in the chat. It was an honor to chair the session, especially the second session. It was very, I loved the session very much. It was very informative. Thank you, ma'am. Also, Dr. Prerna was, I don't think she's there, but we really enjoyed the first session as well. Thank you, participants, for joining today's session. I hope you are taking something from these sessions. Thank you, everyone.